Welcome to Learn English Lab. Have you ever wondered why two people can experience the same event but walk away with completely different lives? Is success determined by luck, talent, or the story you tell yourself every single day? In today's Advanced English Listening podcast, we're uncovering the fascinating psychology of positive thinking, the science behind resilience, mindset, and the hidden conversations shaping your future. You'll discover surprising insights from psychology and neuroscience while learning sophisticated C1 level vocabulary, natural expressions, and everyday idioms used by fluent English speakers. Stay with us until the end, because one simple shift in perspective could transform not only your English, but also the way you see the world.
It really is a profound shift once you strip away the misconceptions and look at the actual mechanics of human psychology.
Okay, let's unpack this. I'm beyond ready to get into this material today.
It's a heavy one, for sure.
Yeah, because frankly, positive thinking has a pretty terrible reputation in a lot of circles. I mean, it evokes images of those cheesy motivational posters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or people just ignoring massive problems while smiling nervously.
Oh, absolutely, which is why we have to strip away the magical thinking. The goal of this deep dive is to really isolate the biological and mental tools that genuinely help a person bounce back from adversity. We aren't looking for feel-good platitudes here. We are looking for evidence.
Right, and as I mentioned in the intro, we are naturally integrating some fantastic advanced English vocabulary along the way. But before we get to the heavy neuroscience, I feel like we need a baseline.
Yeah, we need to set the boundaries.
Definitely. When we talk about positive thinking today, we need to be incredibly clear about what we are not talking about.
What's fascinating here is how the internal language we use dictates our external reality, but it does not work the way pop culture suggests. Not at all.
So what's the dividing line?
We have to draw a hard line between hollow affirmations and grounded cognitive framing.
Hollow affirmations.
Right. Hollow affirmations are those vague bumper sticker slogans you tell yourself. Grounded cognitive framing, on the other hand, is the actual practiced mental habit of interpreting chaotic events in a way that keeps your prefrontal cortex functional.
Okay, I see. So is the difference between closing your eyes and chanting, the universe has a perfect plan for my financial success, versus looking at a negative bank statement and saying, okay, this situation is terrible, but here are the 3 specific variables I can actually control today.
Specifically that distinction is the golden thread we're going to follow through this entire discussion today.
So let's start with what we're calling the great affirmation myth. Because for decades, positive thinking got lumped in with this movement that essentially promised, magic.
Yeah, the idea that if you just stare into a bathroom mirror and repeat, I am a massive success, I am wealthy, I am beloved, your brain will just accept it.
Right. And your reality will magically shift to accommodate this new mood.
Which, scientifically speaking, is highly problematic. I mean, the clinical data strongly suggests that staring in the mirror repeating, I am a success, without any accompanying tangible action, it usually fails.
It just doesn't work.
In fact, it does worse than fail. It can do active psychological harm.
Wait, active harm? I mean, I can understand it being a waste of time, sure.
Yeah.
But how does telling yourself you're great actually hurt you?
Well, it comes down to the brain's threat detection systems. There was this fascinating study where researchers tested this very premise.
Oh, I read about this. They took people with low self-esteem, right?
Spot on. They took participants who were genuinely struggling with low self-esteem, people who felt like they were failing at life, and they had them repeat overwhelmingly positive affirmations that they deeply fundamentally did not believe.
I'm guessing they didn't magically feel better after that.
Not at all. They felt significantly worse. Their anxiety actually spiked. And the reason why is rooted in a concept called cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance. Okay, for those listening, that's a fantastic C1 level term. That's the mental discomfort you feel when you hold 2 conflicting beliefs at the exact same time, right?
Accurately stated. The gap between the forced affirmation, I am a massive success, and the listener's actual internalized belief, I am struggling to pay my rent, creates this violent internal clash.
Because the brain hates a paradox.
It does. It wants reality to make sense.
So if you stand there trying to force a belief that totally contradicts your reality, your brain essentially calls your bluff.
Yeah, it says, no, we aren't a success. Remember that a massive mistake we made yesterday.
Ouch. So it aggressively reminds you of all the evidence proving the affirmation is false, which honestly makes the entire exercise feel Completely futile.
Futile, meaning totally useless or pointless.
Yeah, you're putting in all this emotional effort for a result that produces nothing but frustration.
And this is why a healthy dose of skepticism toward wishful thinking is entirely justified by the science.
Skepticism, having a questioning or doubting attitude.
Right. And skepticism isn't just being a pessimist. In this context, skepticism is a protective mechanism. It keeps you from wasting precious mental energy on methods that are just going to trigger cognitive dissonance and leave you feeling more defeated.
I always picture traditional, superficial, positive thinking, like painting over a leaky pipe in a house.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, imagine you walk into your living room, you see this massive, ugly brown water stain expanding across the ceiling. Yeah. And instead of calling a plumber, you just slap a thick coat of bright, cheerful white paint over it.
And you just ignore the water.
Exactly. I mean, it looks fantastic for about 24 hours. You can stand back and say, wow, beautiful ceiling, no problems here. But it doesn't fix the plumbing.
The rot is still happening underneath.
Yes, the wood is decaying, and eventually the entire ceiling is going to cave in on you.
That analogy is spot on. The white paint is the hollow affirmation. It covers the visual evidence of the problem temporarily, but it doesn't address the structural underlying reality. The water is still leaking.
So if blind affirmations are just painting over a leaky pipe, where did the real evidence-based science of optimism actually begin? Because looking through the notes for this deep dive, the origin story of positive psychology starts in a surprisingly dark place.
It really does. It started in the 1960s.
Which is strange because you'd think positive psychology would start with studying happy people.
You would think so. But the field essentially started with a psychologist named Martin Seligman. Today, he is widely considered the father of positive psychology.
But back then...
Back in the 1960s, he wasn't studying happiness at all. He was studying something incredibly bleak. A psychological phenomenon known as learned helplessness.
Okay, this is a tough one to talk about, but we have to go through it because it really is the absolute foundation of everything else we're going to discuss today.
It is crucial. In his early experiments, which we should note took place in a very different era of ethical standards for psychological research, dogs were exposed to mild, inescapable electric shocks.
It is highly unpleasant to picture.
It is. But the mechanism they discovered is vital to understanding human behavior. The researchers placed these animals in a situation where nothing they did, no amount of running or jumping, would stop the negative stimulus.
So the environment was completely outside their control.
Yes. But the critical part of the experiment, the part that truly shocked the researchers, came in the second phase. They eventually put these same dogs in a new enclosure where they were given an incredibly easy escape route.
Like they could just leave.
The door was literally wide open. All they had to do was walk through the gate to avoid the shock entirely.
But they didn't do it.
No, they didn't. They just lay down on the floor and whimpered.
Wow.
Through repeated exposure to situations they couldn't control, their brains had learned that nothing they did mattered. Action had been decoupled from outcome.
So they stopped trying to escape.
Yeah.
They completely decided to give up. To surrender entirely and stop making any effort. That is just devastating.
It leads to a profound state of mental paralysis.
Paralysis.
Now, when we say paralysis here, we aren't talking about a severed spinal cord. It's figurative. It's a psychological state of being entirely unable to act or move forward, despite having the physical capability to do so. The dogs were psychologically paralyzed by the deeply ingrained belief that any action was futile.
And the truly terrifying part of this research is that human beings do the exact same thing.
We absolutely do.
We experience repeated failures in our own lives. You know, maybe it's a terrible streak in the job market or a series of abusive relationships or chronic health issues, things that feel completely outside our control.
And after enough time, our brains calculate the energy expenditure and decide trying is useless.
We learn to be helpless. We just lie down and take the shock, so to speak.
We do. Our brains are incredibly efficient at pattern recognition. If the pattern says effort equals pain with no reward, the brain shuts down the motivation centers to conserve energy.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Seligman noticed a glaring anomaly in the data, right? Because it wasn't a 100% failure rate.
Far from it. About 1/3 of the animals in the original studies, and a strikingly similar proportion of humans in later ethical human trials, they never gave up.
Never.
Never. It did not matter how many inescapable shocks or uncontrollable failures they experienced, they never stopped looking for the exit. They never, ever developed learned helplessness.
That is wild to me. 1 out of every 3. just refuse to accept defeat, despite having the exact same negative conditioning as the ones who lay down.
And that single observation is what caused Seligman to completely flip the script.
Flip the script. That's a great idiom. To flip the script means to reverse a situation entirely, to look at a narrative or a problem from the exact opposite perspective.
And that's what he did. For decades prior to this, clinical psychology had been obsessed with pathology. The core question was always, what is wrong with people? Why do they break?
Right, focusing on the damage.
But Seligman flipped the script and asked, what makes people thrive? What makes this specific 1/3 of subjects so incredibly resilient?
Resilient, meaning able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. Like a material that can be stretched or struck hard, but still snaps back to its original shape.
That's it. What makes a mind resilient when facing the identical hardship as a mind that simply gives up? The pursuit of that answer birthed the entire field of positive psychology.
So I have to know, what was the secret? Was it just like raw genetic toughness, a higher pain tolerance?
It's not physical toughness at all. The finding suggests the answer to that resilience actually comes down to language, a very specific internal monologue. Seligman called this internal monologue your explanatory style.
Explanatory style.
It is the habitual, almost subconscious way a person explains the causes of good and bad events to themselves. Crucially, it's not about ignoring a setback or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about how your brain categorizes that setback the millisecond after it happens.
Okay, let's break this categorization process down, because researchers define this using 3 specific dimensions. They call them the 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps: permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. Let's tackle permanence first.
Permanence.
When something terrible happens to you, does your brain immediately categorize it as a permanent condition or a temporary glitch?
So a person with a pessimistic explanatory style would think, I'll never succeed. The economy is ruined forever. I will always be lonely. They project the current pain infinitely into the future.
Spot on. While a person with an optimistic style thinks, this specific launch failed. The market is down this quarter. I had a bad date.
It's bounded by time. Okay, the second P is pervasiveness. Now, pervasive is a fantastic vocabulary word.
It really is.
It refers to something, usually something negative, spreading widely throughout an area or a group of people, basically infiltrating everything. So in this context, does this one failure spread to infect everything in your life, or is it isolated?
Exactly. Does the problem bleed into your entire identity? If a pessimist gets a bad performance review at work, the pervasive thought is, I am a complete failure at life. I'm a bad employee, a bad provider, a bad person.
They let it ruin everything.
But the optimist looks at the same review and says, I struggled with the accounting software on this one specific project.
They firewall the failure. They don't let it burn down the whole house.
Beautifully put. And the third P is personalization. When the failure happens, is this 100% my fault? Or is it a complex mix of variables?
Let me guess. A pessimist internalizes all the blame.
They do. An optimist recognizes that while they might have made a mistake, there were also external circumstances involved.
To make this concrete for you listening, let's look at a hypothetical scenario. Imagine you and I both work at a mid-sized tech company, and we both apply for the same major promotion.
Okay, I like this.
We both get called into the manager's office, and we are both told we didn't get it. We are in denial. We both recognize we lost. But let's look at the internal monologue that happens on the drive home.
Okay, you take the pessimistic explanatory style.
All right, so I'm driving home, gripping the steering wheel, and I immediately think, I am never going to advance in my career. I'm just not smart enough to make it in the tech industry. I ruin every opportunity I get, and it is entirely my fault because I'm basically incompetent.
Notice how the 3 Ps lock together to form a cage there. Permanent, never going to advance. Pervasive, not smart enough for the tech industry, letting one missed promotion bleed into a judgment on your entire intellect. And personal, entirely my fault.
Ugh, I feel paralyzed just saying it.
Because that narrative tells your brain that effort is useless. Now let's look at the optimistic explanatory style.
Let's hear it.
The optimist drives home, upset about the projection, but thinks, well, this particular promotion didn't go my way this time. I probably could have prepped my presentation better. But to be fair, they were also looking for someone who had managed an overseas team, which I haven't had the chance to do yet. I'll ask the manager for specific feedback tomorrow and apply again when the next role opens up.
Wow. It's the exact same event, but a completely different universe of meaning. It's temporary this time. It's specific, not pervasive, this particular promotion. And there is a realistic mix of personalization. I could have prepped better, but they also needed a different background.
And we know this isn't just an abstract theory because Seligman tracked this in the real world with brutal efficiency.
Right, the study with the massive sales teams.
Yes, specifically life insurance salespeople.
Selling life insurance has to be one of the most grueling jobs on the planet. I mean, you are facing constant daily rejection.
It is notorious for its high turnover rate. Seligman's team tested the explanatory styles of these salespeople. They found that the sellers who scored high in the optimistic explanatory style significantly, undeniably outsold their pessimistic colleagues.
And they stayed with the company far longer. But wait, I have to challenge this.
Yes.
Is it just that the optimists were, I don't know, happier on the phone? Did they just have better charisma or a smoother sales pitch?
No, the data didn't show they were inherently better communicators. The difference was entirely mechanical. It was simply because the optimists were able to bounce back from rejection faster.
To bounce back, meaning to recover your momentum quickly after a severe setback, like a rubber ball hitting the pavement and springing right back into the air.
That's the mechanism. When the pessimistic salesperson makes 5 cold calls and gets 5 people angrily hanging up the phone, their explanatory style kicks in. I am terrible at this. Nobody will ever buy from me. The economy is too bad.
They experience that cognitive paralysis we talked about.
Yes. So what do? They stop making calls. They go get a coffee. They complain to a coworker.
And the optimist, what do?
The optimist gets the same 5 angry hang-ups. But their explanatory style says, wow, people are really stressed out this morning. Must be a bad time of day to call this specific demographic. I'll switch to a different time zone and try a different list.
So they just keep going.
They pick up the phone and make a 6th call. They win the numbers game purely because they don't paralyze themselves.
The pessimist engages in what psychologists call catastrophic thinking. I love that term.
It's very descriptive.
Catastrophic thinking is this deeply ingrained habit of assuming the absolute worst possible outcome from any minor event. It's like putting on a pair of deeply flawed glasses that distorts your vision so badly that a single normal rain cloud looks like a global apocalyptic winter. You feel one drop of rain and immediately think, the sun is never coming back, the crops will fail, society is collapsing, we are all doomed.
And here's where we have to elevate this conversation, because that catastrophic thinking doesn't just stop at your mood. It isn't just about feeling sad or having a bad day at the office.
What else did you?
Catastrophic thinking literally, physically changes your biology. Which brings us to the underlying hardware, the neuroscience of optimism.
Yes. If this pessimistic style is so damaging psychologically, I have to wonder what it's actually doing to the physical brain over time. Are we just hurting our feelings, or are we causing actual structural damage?
We are causing structural changes through a process called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity is the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout your entire life. For a long time, science thought the adult brain was a static, unchangeable object. We now know it is highly dynamic.
Right.
The guiding principle in neuroscience is neurons that fire together, wire together.
I've always thought of neuroplasticity like water carving a canyon out of solid rock. The first time water flows over the rock, it just trickles wherever it can. But if that water flows over the exact same path every single day for years, it carves a groove.
A very deep groove.
Yeah, over decades it carves a massive canyon. Eventually the groove is so deep that it becomes physically impossible for the water to flow anywhere else.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. Every time you have a thought, an electrical signal travels down a pathway in your brain. If you repeatedly fire anxious, pessimistic, catastrophic thoughts, you are carving a massive, deep canyon for fear.
Wow.
You are structurally strengthening the pathways in and around your amygdala.
The amygdala, that's the primitive part of the brain, right? The alarm system.
It is the threat detection center. It is designed to keep you alive by scanning for danger. When it senses a threat, it triggers the fight, flight, or freeze response.
So if I'm constantly catastrophizing about my mortgage or, my emails, I'm basically training my amygdala to be a hypersensitive smoke detector that goes off every time I make toast.
Specifically that. And on the flip side, if you practice an optimistic explanatory style, if you actively force your brain to categorize setbacks as temporary and specific, what are you strengthening?
The other pathways.
You are carving pathways in the prefrontal cortex. This is the highly evolved region right behind your forehead. It is the CEO of the brain. It is responsible for long-term planning, emotional regulation, rational decision-making, and, most importantly, sending signals to the amygdala to shut off the alarm.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just about emotional regulation. This physiological war between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex dictates our physical health.
It dictates systemic physiology. When your amygdala is constantly firing because your explanatory style is interpreting every email as a permanent disaster, your body floods your bloodstream with cortisol. Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone.
Now, cortisol isn't inherently evil.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if a bear is chasing me, I want cortisol.
Absolutely. In short, acute bursts, cortisol mobilizes glucose to your muscles, it heightens your reflexes, it saves your life.
So what's the problem?
Human beings are unique because we can trigger this physical response purely through thought. If you are catastrophizing, you have elevated cortisol ringing in the background 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Oh, that sounds exhausting.
That chronic exposure is incredibly toxic. It leads to weakened immune function, systemic inflammation, and it actually degrades telomeres, which accelerates cellular aging.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying that negative thinking literally ages your cells faster?
Yes. It has a measurable physiological cost. But the reverse is also biologically true. When your prefrontal cortex overrides the panic and you enter positive emotional states, your brain increases the production of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin.
And those aren't just feel-good chemicals.
No, they don't just act as mood boosters. They fundamentally change how your brain processes information.
Which perfectly lines up with the broaden and build theory from researcher Barbara Fredrickson.
Fredrickson's work is revolutionary here. The broaden and build theory proposes that positive emotions literally physically expand our visual and cognitive attention.
Expanded how?
When you feel safe and optimistic, your brain opens up to new ideas. You broaden your perspective, which allows you to build new skills and social resources.
Whereas negative emotions do the exact opposite. They forcefully narrow your focus. Think about the evolutionary purpose of fear. If you are walking down the street and you see a car swerving toward you on the sidewalk, your vision physically narrows. Your peripheral vision drops away.
You aren't looking at the trees anymore.
Right. Your brain stops thinking about what you're going to have for dinner. It stops thinking about art or philosophy, and it focuses entirely on the threat.
Which is fantastic for dodging the car. You don't want cognitive flexibility in that moment. You want hyper-focused survival instincts.
But it's terrible for everyday life. If you constantly rehearse worst-case scenarios, and to rehearse means to mentally practice or repeat something in preparation for it happening, your brain structurally expects to be attacked. So it stays narrow.
Very narrow.
You lose the ability to brainstorm, to be creative, or to see the solutions that are right in front of you.
Because your brain believes it is under attack from a predator, even if that predator is just a tight deadline at work.
So if our internal narrative can physically change the structure of our brain and change the hormones flooding our bloodstream, I have to ask, how far does the biological power of belief actually extend? If I change my thoughts, how much can I actually change my physical body?
To answer that, we have to look at the most extreme, undeniable evidence of belief-shaping biology, the placebo effect.
This is one of my absolute favorite topics in all of science.
It is wild.
The placebo effect is a measurable improvement in a patient's condition that is caused entirely by their belief in a treatment rather than the treatment itself. We usually hear about this with sugar pills in drug trials, right? A patient takes a pill with 0 active ingredients, but their headache goes away because they believe they took a painkiller.
Exactly.
But the research highlighted here goes way beyond sugar pills. It's a study that is just mind-blowing.
It really pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible. We are talking about the sham knee surgery study. This is a landmark piece of medical research.
Tell us about it.
The researchers took a group of patients who were suffering from severe, debilitating osteoarthritis in their knees. These people were in chronic pain, limping, needing walking aids. Half of these patients received the actual standard surgical repair. Doctors went in, cleared out the damaged cartilage, and flushed the joint.
Okay, standard procedure. And the other half?
The other half, the control group, received a sham surgery.
A completely fake surgery.
Right. An elaborate theatrical production of a surgery. The patients in the sham group were put under real anesthesia. The surgeons made the exact same incisions on their knees so the scars would look identical. They splashed some saline solution around to mimic the sounds of the procedure.
You're kidding.
They even played a video of a real knee surgery on the monitors just in case a patient woke up slightly under the sedation. And then they simply sewed the knees back up. They did absolutely zero repair work inside the joint. No cartilages removed. Nothing was fixed.
I have to stop you there. Are you telling me they literally cut people open, did nothing, and sent them home to recover?
That is what a surgical placebo requires. And the results are what make this study legendary.
What happened?
For 2 years following the procedure, the researchers tracked both groups. The patients who had the completely fake surgery reported the exact same long-term pain reduction and the same functional improvement in walking and climbing stairs as the patients who had the real invasive surgery.
That is deeply counterintuitive.
Oh.
And by counterintuitive, I mean it goes completely contrary to what anyone would expect by common sense.
It makes no sense mechanically.
Right. It defies all mechanical logic that just expecting your knee to heal can actually cause shredded cartilage to stop sending severe pain signals to your brain. Yet the data proves that expectation triggers real physical shifts.
Because the brain is a prediction machine. When the brain expects healing because it believes a surgeon fixed the problem, it activates the descending pain modulation system.
Which does what?
The brain literally commands the release of endogenous opioids, the body's natural painkillers, and actively dials down the inflammation response in that specific joint. Belief is not just a feeling. Belief is a biological variable that alters cellular function.
Now, I need to jump in here with a very crucial, massive caveat, because I know how this sounds. We are not saying, and the medical research is explicitly warned against this, that positive thinking replaces modern medicine.
Please no.
Please do not cancel your chemotherapy appointments or try to heal a compound fracture with good vibes and a vision board. That is a dangerous, highly irresponsible conclusion.
Completely irresponsible. The placebo effect is powerful, but it has hard biological limits. It doesn't shrink tumors. It doesn't knit broken bones back together. It doesn't cure viral infections.
So what does it do?
What it proves is that your psychological expectation heavily shapes how your central nervous system processes pain, inflammation, and the recovery process.
So, if the brain is this powerful, if expectation can literally release natural painkillers and change our physical reality, shouldn't we just force ourselves to be perfectly positive all the time? Why not just expect perfection 24/7? Why not live in a constant state of blissful fantasy where everything always works out?
Because that is where the biology turns against you. Science shows that unregulated, constant positivity can be incredibly dangerous, and it actively destroys your motivation to achieve anything.
Okay, let's pump the brakes. To pump the brakes is an idiom meaning to slow down, pause, and reconsider before continuing. We really need to look at the dark side of this science. When does positive thinking go terribly wrong?
It goes wrong when it detaches from reality. The leading researcher in this specific area is a psychologist named Gabrielle Oettingen. She has spent decades researching what happens when people engage in pure, ungrounded fantasy.
You mean like the entire manifestation trend?
No, exactly like that.
Like creating a vision board where you just imagine yourself as a millionaire sitting on a yacht, but you don't actually have a business plan, a product, or any intention of working a 60-hour week.
Accurately, that kind of visualization. Oettingen studied university students who fantasized vividly about achieving their goals. They imagined getting a high-paying job, acing a difficult exam, or losing a significant amount of weight. They were told to really feel the success, to picture the end result in high definition.
And what happened?
The results completely upended the self-help industry. The students who indulged the most in these highly positive, friction-free fantasies were statistically less likely to actually achieve their goals.
I don't understand. Shouldn't visualizing success give you the motivation to work harder for it? Isn't that what athletes do?
You would think so, but it comes down to how the brain processes reward. The brain is, from an evolutionary standpoint, a bit lazy. It wants to conserve energy.
Okay.
When you vividly imagine achieving the goal, you picture yourself holding the trophy or getting the job offer, your brain gets a false hit of satisfaction. It releases dopamine as if you have already achieved the goal in reality.
Because the brain fails to distinguish between a vividly imagined accomplishment and a real accomplishment.
Right. And once the brain gets the dopamine reward, it relaxes. It signals to your nervous system, great job, we acquired the resources, you can rest now.
Wow.
It actively lowers your systolic blood pressure and reduces your energy levels. You lose your drive, your momentum slows down, and eventually you hit a wall.
To hit a wall means to reach a point where further progress feels completely impossible. You run out of energy because your brain thinks, why am I studying for this exam? We already got an A+ in our imagination. Time for a nap.
And this evolutionary glitch is what feeds the culture of toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity is the harmful, relentless insistence on maintaining a positive outlook regardless of the actual factual situation. It involves dismissing real problems, suppressing genuine negative emotions, and invalidating trauma or grief.
Oh, I've seen this everywhere. It's incredibly alienating. When a friend loses their job, they are legitimately terrified about making rent and feeding their kids, and someone chimes in with, just stay positive. Good vibes only. Everything happens for a reason.
It is terribly dismissive. It invalidates a completely rational fear response. Or consider someone telling themselves that a genuinely toxic, abusive work environment will just work itself out if they keep a smile on their face and don't complain.
That isn't optimism.
As clinical psychologists point out, that is cowardice and avoidance dressed up in cheerful language.
Dressed up in, that's a great phrase. It means disguised or presented as something much more acceptable or attractive than it really is.
Yeah.
Toxic positivity is basically denial wearing a party hat.
So if pure fantasy destroys motivation and toxic positivity is just denial, what is the alternative? How do we use optimism effectively?
Right, there has to be a balance.
Gabrielle Oettingen developed a practical framework called WOOP, W-O-O-P. It stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan.
I love this framework because it forces you to remain grounded. Grounded means realistic, sensible, and firmly connected to actual circumstances. Walk us through the mechanics of how WOOP actually preserves our motivation.
It works by contrasting the fantasy with reality. First, the wish. You define exactly what you want. Second, the outcome. You vividly imagine the best possible result, allowing yourself that hit of optimistic motivation.
But you don't stop there.
No. Here is the critical, mandatory pivot. Third, the obstacle. You brutally and honestly identify the internal and external hurdles standing in your way. You visualize the late nights, the rejections, the lack of funding, your own procrastination.
You deliberately trigger a bit of stress.
Yes. You bring the amygdala slightly back online. And fourth, the plan. You make a concrete if-then strategy for when that obstacle appears. If I feel too tired to go to the gym, then I will put on my running shoes anyway and just walk for 10 minutes.
It blends the motivational power of optimism with the harsh, undeniable reality of obstacles. It forces your brain to realize that the goal has not yet been achieved, which stops the premature dopamine release and maintains your energy.
It channels the optimism into the plan rather than the outcome.
To truly understand how to blend this unshakable optimism with brutal reality at the highest possible level of human endurance, we have to look at one of the most extreme survival stories in modern military history. This historical camp blew my mind when I was reading through our material for today.
You are referring to the story of Admiral James Stockdale. It is the ultimate test of everything we've discussed today.
Yes, Admiral Stockdale was a highly decorated U.S. Navy officer. During the Vietnam War, his plane was shot down, and he was taken as a prisoner of war. He was held in the infamous Hanoi Hilton prison camp for over 7 years.
7 years.
During that time, he endured horrific, systematic torture, total physical isolation, and he had absolutely no certainty that he would ever go home or ever see his wife and children again. There was no release date.
The psychological pressure of an open-ended trauma like that is unimaginable. It is the purest form of the learned helplessness environment Seligman studied.
Years later, the author Jim Collins was interviewing Stockdale for a book on leadership, and he asked him a fascinating question. He asked, who didn't make it out? Who are the ones who didn't survive the camp?
And Stockdale's answer was chilling. He didn't say it was the weak ones or the pessimists. He said, oh, that's easy. It was the optimists.
The optimists. The exact people you would assume would survive the best. But he clarified what kind of optimists they were. He said they were the ones who set false, unsupported deadlines based on pure fantasy.
Pure fantasy.
They would sit in their cells and say, we'll be out by Christmas. The war will end. And Christmas would come and Christmas would go and they were still in a cage. Then they'd say, okay, we'll be out by Easter. Easter would come and go. Thanksgiving, Christmas again.
Stockdale noted that eventually, after enough of these false deadlines were broken, those men died of a broken heart. They literally lost the will to live. Their optimism was not grounded in reality. It was pure, unadulterated fantasy. And when the brutal reality of their situation repeatedly crushed that fantasy, it crushed their spirit completely. Their biology just gave up.
But Stockdale himself survived those 7 years. And he survived by embodying a mindset that psychology now calls the Stockdale paradox.
The Stockdale paradox is a duality. It states that you must have unwavering faith that you will eventually prevail, combined simultaneously with the rigorous discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be.
Let's define those vocabulary words, because they are powerful. Unwavering means steady, resolute, never weakening or hesitating. Prevail means to ultimately succeed or win out despite immense, overwhelming difficulty. And discipline, in this context, is the highly controlled behavior required to pursue a difficult goal without distraction.
Stockdale had the unwavering faith that he would prevail. He held onto the core belief that he would get out someday and turn the horrific experience into the defining event of his life.
But he paired that with what?
He paired that with the rigorous discipline to wake up every single morning and say to himself, I am in a brutal POW camp. I might be tortured today. I will not be out by Christmas, and I must face this reality head on.
So what does this all mean? If we look back at Oettingen's research, were the optimists who died in the camp essentially falling victim to the pure fantasy trap?
Fundamentally, yes. They envisioned the outcome, going home by Christmas, but they flatly refused to face the obstacle, which was the indefinite, politically complex nature of their captivity. They lacked cognitive framing.
They lacked clear eyes. Having clear eyes is an idiom meaning to have an honest, unflinching view of reality. You aren't wearing rose-colored glasses. You see the danger, you acknowledge the pain, you map out the obstacles, but you hold on to the hope anyway.
That is the ultimate, most mature form of positive thinking. Clear eyes and a stubborn, methodical hope.
Okay, but thankfully, most of the people listening to this deep dive are not facing a POW camp. We are facing the everyday grind. We are facing a tough quarter at the office, a sudden health scare, a painful breakup, or a severe financial hit. How do we build this Stockdale resilience on a random Tuesday morning when we just feel overwhelmed?
You build it through intentional practice. Researchers have identified several highly specific, evidence-based habits that physically rewire the brain for this realistic optimism over time. It's all about the accumulated evidence.
Accumulated, meaning gathered gradually, layer by layer, over a long period. Doing one single push-up doesn't make you strong, but the accumulated effect of doing 50 push-ups every day for a year entirely changes the physiology of your body.
The research outlines 4 key habits.
Let's walk through them in detail because I want to know the how behind them. Habit number 1 is gratitude journaling. Now, I'll admit, this sounds a bit cliche.
It sounds cliche until you look at the brain scans. The psychologist Robert Emmons did the landmark peer-reviewed research on this. He found that the simple act of writing down 3 specific things you are grateful for each week physically interrupts the brain's negativity bias.
Negativity bias is our brain's evolutionary tendency to focus far more heavily on negative information than positive information. It's a survival mechanism. It's why one insult from a stranger online ruins your entire day, even if you received 10 amazing compliments from your friends. The brain prioritizes the threat. Exactly. Left to its own devices, your brain scans the horizon for danger. Gratitude journaling forces your prefrontal cortex to deliberately scan your environment for positives, actively fighting that evolutionary bias.
So it's like a workout for the brain.
It builds new neural pathways. Over time, Emmons' participants reported significantly better sleep architecture, higher baseline moods, and notably fewer visits to the doctor for stress-related illnesses.
Habit number 2, cognitive reframing. We touched on this earlier with the explanatory styles, but how do we practice it?
It is a core foundational tool in cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. You don't try to stop negative thoughts from happening. That's impossible. Instead, you consciously catch the automatic negative thought, examine it for logical flaws, and reframe it.
To reframe is to interpret a situation from a new, structurally more helpful perspective.
Yes. So instead of walking out of a meeting and thinking, I completely bombed that presentation, I'm an idiot, I'm going to get fired, you pause, catch the catastrophizing, and reframe it using evidence.
Like, I stumbled on the 3rd slide because I lost my place, but I answered the Q&A section really well, and now I know exactly what I need to practice for next month's meeting.
You strip the emotion out of it and focus on the data. Habit number 3 is physical movement. Exercise.
I always roll my eyes a little when people tell me to exercise for my mental health. When I'm stressed, the last thing I want to do is go jog. But the biology is undeniable, isn't it?
It truly is undeniable. Exercise creates endorphins, which make you feel good temporarily, but more importantly, It triggers the release of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
What does that actually do?
Think of BDNF as high-grade fertilizer for your brain. It is a protein that literally promotes the survival of nerve cells and helps grow new neural pathways. It accelerates the neuroplasticity we talked about earlier.
Oh, wow.
If you were trying to rewire your explanatory style, exercise gives your brain the biological building blocks to make those new connections faster and stronger. It is foundational for your overall well-being, which encompasses your general state of being comfortable, healthy, resilient, and happy.
And the final habit number 4, might be the most important one of all, especially when we look at longevity: social connection.
Human beings are profoundly social animals. The most compelling data on this comes from the famous Harvard study of adult development. This is unprecedented research. They tracked a cohort of participants for over 80 years, from teenagers all the way to old age, monitoring their health, their careers, their mental state.
And what was the conclusion? What makes us resilient over an 80-year lifespan?
The single strongest predictor of long-term physical health, happiness, and cognitive resilience was not their cholesterol levels, it wasn't their wealth, and it wasn't their fame. It was the quality and warmth of their close relationships.
Why? Mechanistically, how does having friends keep you healthy?
Because it regulates the nervous system. When you face a severe setback, having a trusted community to talk to literally acts as a buffer against cortisol spikes. When you co-regulate your emotions with another human being, your amygdala receives a biological signal that you are safe, that you are not alone in the wild, and it turns down the stress response.
You have a community to help you carry the cognitive burden. Using the idiom, engaging in all 4 of these habits, puts you back in the driver's seat. Being in the driver's seat means you're in control of a situation. You aren't just reacting passively to whatever life throws at you. You are actively steering your biological and cognitive framing.
There are small, consistent repetitions. They aren't magic tricks, and they won't make your problems disappear overnight. But they are the scientifically validated tools that allow you to keep pushing forward.
To keep pushing forward means to continue trying, to maintain your momentum despite immense difficulty, exhaustion, or repeated failure.
And that's the real victory.
Which brings us to the synthesis of this entire deep dive. True positive thinking, as we've learned today, is not about hollow mirror affirmations. It's not painting over a leaky pipe and pretending the house isn't rotting.
It is understanding the mechanics of neuroplasticity. It is mastering your explanatory style, training your brain to see setbacks as temporary, specific, and solvable. It is avoiding the dangerous dopamine-draining trap of toxic positivity and pure fantasy by making concrete, actionable plans for the inevitable obstacles.
And ultimately, it is embracing the profound wisdom of the Stockdale paradox, holding that fierce, unwavering belief that you will prevail in the end, while staring down the brutal reality of your current situation with clear, unflinching eyes.
I want to leave you with a final reflection drawn directly from the core of the psychological research we've explored today. Here's something worth reflecting on. The next time you face a sudden setback, what story will you immediately tell yourself about it? Will it be permanent or temporary? Will it define you entirely, or is it just this one fleeting moment in a long life? The answer to that question might matter more than you think.
A deeply powerful thought to carry with you this week as you navigate your own challenges. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of the mind. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel to keep expanding your knowledge and your advanced English vocabulary. We will see you on the next deep dive.